a lot of that was because of what I received from handball that I was always willing to give back.
Today on the show, I have semi-retired Memphis State handball champion and Canadian Hall of Famer. Rob Pierce is up next with guest co-host Chris Jennings. Welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and this is where we dive deep into the stories of retired athletes, their perseverance, their resilience, their career pivots, and finding the passion they crave. So grab your iced tea because I'm from the South. Get ready to be motivated and inspired because this is where the real stories are told. Beginning back in 1986, Memphis State University, now the University of Memphis, went on an incredible run with 8 consecutive national titles in the sport of handball, all led by famed coach Charlie Mazzoni. Today, I have a guest co-host hailing from Canada. He's a retired professional handball player and so much a part of the Memphis State handball legacy. He's a 4-time U.S. Handball Association Collegiate All-American, a 1993 a National Collegiate Open Singles Champion, and a 2-time National Collegiate Open Doubles Champion in 92 and 93. He's a Canadian National 3-wall Open Singles and 4-wall Open Doubles Champion with today's guest. Welcome to the show, my co-host for today, Chris Jennings.
Thanks, Sandy. So nice to be here again with you. It's been a while.
It has. We did your interview on a different podcast of mine back in, I think, 2020, right after the pandemic hit.
Yeah, it was deep into COVID. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yes. Everybody had time for me then. I could book everybody. Okay, so let's get into today's guest. He hails from Ontario, Canada, but now calls Tennessee home. He's a semi-retired professional handball player from Memphis State University and very much a part of the Memphis State handball legacy as well. He played on the USHA Pro Tour from 1999 to 2005. He's a 2016 Canadian Hall of Fame inductee. He's won a list of championships in college, pro, US, and Canada. I'll put them all in the show notes so you can see them all. And he's been a 30-year promoter of handball here in Tennessee and on numerous boards, both in the States and in Canada. Welcome to the show, Mr. Handball himself, Rob Pierce.
Yes, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you guys. I was, when we were prepping for today's episode, y'all were quite funny. So for everybody listening out there, I expect us to have a lot of fun today. And as I said, I'm working with a guest co-host today. We're going to try this out for a couple of episodes. And so, Chris, you got a lot of pressure on you today to make sure you do well so that others can be a guest co-host. So how we know each other, obviously, Rob, I think you and I were actually in college together at the same time.
I believe so.
I knew who you were, but I don't think you knew who I was. I worked the front desk, and I knew more of the racquetball players than I did the handball players. And then Chris came. I think when I graduated, you had just started.
That's right. I started in 90. Yeah.
And Rob, when did you start?
86.
Yeah, that's when I started. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have mutual friends in common. Donnie Young is one of those. So I wanted to try a new sport, and Chris had been on the podcast before, and I'll also link his previous podcast in this episode as well. But so Rob, let's start off, with what do you do that pays the bills? Like, what's your job now that pays the bills?
Yeah, so I work in the physical therapy industry. It's what I've done ever since I finished grad school at Memphis in 94, December 93. So I basically work in rehab for workers' compensation people, evaluate them, determine if they can go back to work, and help the physicians and insurance companies close workers' comp cases. So that's sort of my profession.
What was your undergraduate major in?
So undergrad degree was exercise science. Graduate degree was exercise physiology. Okay. So I'm a unicorn in the industry. Yeah, most people are physical therapists doing it.
Right.
Got in a weird way. And that was an expertise that not many people do within the industry. So sort of got my little niche that I've carved out for myself for the last 30 years, and I've been in business for 16 years, sold it, in 2014, and now I work for the corporation I sold it to.
Okay, so Rob, I have a question about those degrees. Did playing sports have an impact on why you chose those degrees going into college?
Really it did, because I was always a workout guy and liked working out,
Right.
and really enjoyed the kinesiology aspect of it, understanding function and how everything works physically. So that's which ties into to any sport that you play. So I always really enjoyed the biomechanics of the sport. So yeah, definitely that's why I majored in what I did, and it's sort of why I fell into what I do. It's
Okay.
all it was sort of all a fluke when I look at it, but it sort of worked out.
Okay. Chris, I'm going to get you involved now. Since you're
So,
my co-host.
so I've known Rob a long time. We
I-
we go way back to, probably when Rob was in middle school, and we met early on. But
Really?
Rob, let's talk about now, how did you end up in Chattanooga and making it your home, and what you've created there with the handball community? Um,
Oh boy, this is a long story, but I'll try to condense it quickly. So, met my ex-wife at at Memphis State when I was in undergrad, and when I finished my undergrad degree in '91, I had to go back to Canada because I was done school and didn't have any work permit or anything, and had no intention of going back to the States. I was planning on going to physical therapy school in Canada and staying there, and then spent one winter in Edmonton, Alberta, where I was born and where my mother had moved, and it was so miserable.
That'll
Um,
change you. That
oh
that
yes,
cold will send you back.
oh it's miserable. Like, it's absolutely brutal. But then my girlfriend, like when I left, I told my girlfriend, "Hey, I don't know what's going to go on, so we'll figure it
You're
out."
just like adios.
Yes, it really was. And then within a couple weeks, we figured out, okay, we're going to stay together, and so I stayed in Canada for 8 months, and then arranged through Charlie to get a graduate assistantship at the University of Memphis now, and then came back, went to grad school, helped coach the handball team, finished grad school, got married. She was from Chattanooga, actually from Signal Mountain. Worked in Memphis for a couple of years, and then when I had an opportunity, I transferred to Chattanooga, and that's how I got here. And I still live on Signal Mountain.
So when was the first time you played handball? Because handball is obviously looking, and we're going to get into this for everybody out there. Handball is very much a part of your life now, as it's always been. But when did you start playing handball?
So I started in grade 6 in Burlington, Ontario. The middle school I went to, the PE teacher was a handball player, and part of his PE program was handball. So
Okay.
every kid at the school played. It was actually remarkable. We would have hundreds of kids that played handball every day at this middle school, and it's a obscure sport. Not many people know about it.
I didn't.
But we had this huge handball program, and all these kids fought over courts, and it was actually quite remarkable. And that teacher stayed there for a long time. I'm still really good friends with him, talk to him all the time. Um, he changed schools, moved handball to that other school, and then but when he retired, it just fell apart. So I basically started in middle school and then kept playing through high school, through the YMCA systems,
Right.
um, and then started traveling, playing tournaments, all that stuff.
So, Chris, is that when you met him? Did you start playing handball at the same time?
So I probably started maybe even a little bit younger than Rob. My dad um, had worked at the JCC in downtown Toronto, and he played handball. And there was a lot of handball players, or old Jewish guys that were playing handball. But there were some really top caliber players at that club, and former Canadian champions, and really good players. And you know, for me as a kid trying to get on a court with these old guys, it was next to impossible until I could prove myself. And my dad would get me on the courts and play with me and a couple other guys until I got good enough to get on the court with some of the better guys. But when I got a little bit older, when I got to, what was, probably grade 6 or 7, and where Rob was, and Rob's 2 years older than I am, so his
You
teacher
never
at the
know.
time, Brian Gatto, he would run these tournaments in Burlington, and I would come from Toronto. And at that time in the 80s, it was probably the most junior handball players anywhere in North America at that time. There was so many kids playing. And so I got to play against kids my own age, which I never got to do at home. So it was really important. And these tournaments were massive. They would take up a whole weekend, and there'd be hundreds of kids playing out of Burlington. And so that's where I ended up running into Rob at these junior tournaments. And then as we got older, we traveled to play in adult tournaments, and we stayed in touch throughout that whole time. Even when Rob was already gone to Memphis, he stayed in touch with me and would tell me all about it.
So Rob, what was it about handball? Because I mean, us from especially down south, we think of Canada and we think everybody's a hockey player. Okay.
Right.
I mean, seriously. I even reached out to Chris and I was like, I need some hockey players. You've got to know some hockey players.
Well, you got two right here.
But what was it about handball that made you just want to keep doing it?
It's an extremely unique sport. It's extremely difficult. So I think your personality has to match it. Like the kids that started playing and kept playing, they were sort of very highly motivated, good at, you got to be an above average athlete to play. But I think your personality has to match it. So you like the challenge, and then from success, it just builds confidence, and then it just snowballs.
Right.
So, Chris and I and some other guys, we were really, really good juniors. And, everybody, all the adults praised us. And so it made you feel great. And then we were really successful. And it just kept snowballing and building your confidence, and you just matured faster, I think. Because we can tell you some wicked stories.
I told y'all we were going to have some fun today.
I don't think anybody's prepared for it.
So Rob, did you play any other sports?
Yeah. So I played hockey till I was 16, 17. In Canada, once you're 16, if you're going anywhere with it. And I knew I wasn't. And I was decent, but I wasn't going, you're not going professional. I was a really good volleyball player. So that's the one sport I played all through high school. I was a good basketball player, but I stopped that just because between volleyball season was the same as football season in Canada. So I played volleyball, and then basketball would start when volleyball was done. And I was playing so much handball, we were traveling so much, it just got to the point I just gave up on basketball. But I stuck with volleyball through high school, and really got serious about handball, especially in grade, I guess I was in grade probably 10. Probably grade 10, because a good buddy of ours that went to Memphis with me, Jeff Cottom, his parents.
I can't get a hold of. I've
messaged
we'll
get a hold of him.
Nothing.
I'll make sure you get a hold of him because he'd be great too.
He accepted my Facebook request, but never read the message.
Yeah, he's a bit of a unicorn when it comes to technology too. He's not much on social media.
So that's funny. You say it's an intelligent sport, and y'all are having technology issues. I'm sorry.
He flies planes for a living. Come on, he's got to be.
Okay, go ahead.
So Jeff's family was very well off, and my family essentially I didn't have much of a family. So their family sort of took me under their wing, and I became like the third son. Right. And anywhere we wanted to go, they paid for us to go. So Jeff and I, and then his younger brother, Donnie, we would drive anywhere within 10, 12 hours of where we lived outside of Toronto.
Wow.
And we were gone at least 2 weekends a month, if not 3, sometimes 4 weekends a month, going to tournaments all over the place. Like, I don't know how we survived,
I
because
don't either.
this is before the internet, before cell phones. We just have a map, an atlas, and we're going to Boston, and we're
Yeah.
16 years old, and we're driving to Boston, and we always got there. And it
No
was just a
GPS.
remarkable thing.
What was
Huh?
it, Chris?
No GPS back then.
Yeah, I
No.
traveled with a map too, just
Oh,
a
yeah.
map. But did you have a parent with you? Any parent?
No,
No. Oh my God.
that's why it was so
You'd
great.
go across the border with no parental.
No, back in the 80s, no one cared about anything. It's just funny. You know,
Um. So when did you know that you were really good? When
when I
did when
got
did
in,
it when did it just kind of like you look around? I mean, even though you're winning the tournaments and stuff, but like when did you look around and go, I'm pretty good?
actually, it's funny. Chris will laugh at this. The first time I beat a friend of ours named Barry Glass. So he was the stud junior handball player in Canada, and he was my age. We went to middle school and then high school together. And the first time I beat him in grade 9, like, no one ever got close to beating this guy. He was the most phenomenal athlete in every sport. It didn't matter what sport it was. He was phenomenal. And in grade 9, I remember the first when we played pickup games at the Y. I remember the first time I beat him in grade 9. It was like a shocker. It's just a little pickup game, but everything we play is serious. And then that's when I realized, I was like, oh, I keep with this. Maybe I can be decent.
Mm-hmm.
I have it's as much psychological as it is because of my family and my upbringing. And
Right.
handball became my family. And all the guys became my brothers. All the adults became my pseudo parents or big brothers. And so for me, that was my true connection, was the psychological aspect of family. And it's just, honestly, we don't have enough time to really get into it. But
Right.
that's probably the reason why I really, truly stuck with it, not success from it. It was more being included and involved in a family unit and being recognized and praised as well. Every
Right.
kid needs praise, and I never got that from my family. And I think that's what got me addicted to it, tell you the truth.
I've some of the other guests that we've had on the show, a lot of them, especially I think the guys have talked about, they've really talked about how that was what they missed when they ended their career. They missed
Mhm.
that camaraderie, they missed that team atmosphere. And, that's the one thing that I recognized from you guys was that, and maybe it was just that team, maybe it was this perfect circumstance of all these factors coming together, but you all are very much still family and friends today. You're very much close as you
Oh,
were
absolutely.
back
Yeah,
in the 80s and 90s.
Yep.
absolutely. And in Memphis too, you got to remember that we all lived in a house together. We were an unofficial frat house. It was our brotherhood. The handball house is famous.
It was famous.
Yeah.
It
Thank
And
was
God there's no
famous.
cell phones.
and the picture that's hanging above Rob right now is
Lean over,
Leroy
Rob.
Neiman.
Leave it. There you go.
Leroy Neiman painting. It's a print, I assume,
Yeah,
but
it is.
Leroy Neiman of a guy named Jimmy Jacobs, and Jimmy Jacobs was one of the greatest American handball players back in the 50s and 60s, who also went on to manage Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson's early years with Jimmy Jacobs and Customato were the reason that we see the Mike Tyson, the incredible boxer that he was back in the day. But that hung in the house, that picture.
Mhm.
So
So,
seeing it right now, it brings back a lot of memories for me.
for any of you that don't know, the handball house was legendary. It was
Yes.
over there.
It's
It
still
was
standing.
It
How it's
is.
still standing.
It's been renovated. But it's on the street. What was the street? It's over there by
Kearney.
what now?
Kearney.
Kearney
Okay.
Avenue.
Yeah.
It was, and it's behind where the athlete dorm
The
used to
P
be.
building. Yep.
Yeah,
Hyper
P
building.
building and all of there. It's back over there. Yeah, it was legendary.
But that was our family unit, right?
It
That was
was.
our group. That was our brotherhood. That we had something special that none of the other teams had. They lived in
Mhm.
dorms or whatever at other campuses, but we had this close knit unit that we're all still friends today.
So, there's a lot of talk now. Obviously, the portal is part of the NCAA athletic community now. And I think as of last week, I think somebody said there were over 1,100 men basketball players in the portal looking for a new team. And last year, I think it got up to like 1,500 at one time. Um, what was it about you guys that just made you bond together? Was it because a lot of you came from Canada, a lot of you, but
Yeah, pretty much. I'm not majority, but a large chunk of us were all grew up together,
yeah.
playing against each other in junior tournaments in Canada. Then we sort of recruited each other.
Mm-hmm.
So there was the first guy that came from Canada was Robert Larhoven in the late '70s, early '80s, and then he got another guy from Montreal, Sean Massey, to come. And then Sean got Mark Palgrabia to come, who was from Ontario. And then by that time, Memphis was starting to steamroll. And then Mark's, I don't know, I can't remember if it was really Mark that talked to us or he has told Charlie about us. And then Jeff and I came down, and we got Chris to come down, and then it was just a
Just
continuous
snowballed.
flood of guys bringing our buddies down that were all really talented handball players.
See,
And then
Sandy,
Charlie was a big influence as well.
yeah, and Sandy, it was different back then. Like Coach Mazzoni, he didn't go to junior national tournaments and recruit players. Actually, not many of the college coaches back then did that. So because we were club level, we spent a lot of time, chatting to each other and recruiting each other.
Sure.
And still to this day, and Rob will tell you that one of our main rivalries was Lake Forest College in Chicago, and we knew a bunch of guys that played there. And they had a famous coach who was a lot more technical than Charlie.
Mhm.
This guy had written books on handball, and he still kicks himself for not recruiting us, our group of Rob and Jeff and myself, because we beat them every year.
Yep.
So Rob, what was it like that first and for everybody out there, Chris's story, we went through his whole career, so I'll make sure to share that link so you guys can hear it, and maybe I can get him to come back on the show to do his own episode. But Rob, what was it like when you first came to Memphis? Like, was it culture shock? Like, was there any shock? Like,
Oh boy. So
the
I
handball
guess
house was probably already in full force?
no, it wasn't. No,
No?
we actually
Okay.
no, it wasn't. We stayed in the dorm in Richardson Towers the first year.
Yes. That's, yeah.
Yep. So Jeff and I were in a room. So the handball team, I think we're on the third floor, and the handball team had the whole corner. Like we had, I think,
Which is,
4 rooms
that's
on the
how you
corner.
know Donnie.
Yes.
The
Yes.
famous third floor on the guy's side. Yes, the Richardson Towers.
So, and then after our freshman year, which was phenomenal, we were going to buy a house together. We was like, hey, let's just buy a house. So we're just stupid guys. So we were going to buy a house. We had no damn money. I don't know what we were thinking. And it got to Jeff's dad, who was very well off. And Jeff's dad said, okay, that's stupid, but I'll buy a house for you and you guys just pay me rent. So so Sean, who's a real estate guy, he found the house and Jeff's dad bought it. And so my sophomore year, that's when we moved in the handball house.
So was it a culture shock coming to Memphis?
Yeah, from a racism standpoint, because in Canada there's no racism,
Yes.
or the racism is there's not even really race. At least when we grew up, there wasn't. There probably is now. So when I got to Memphis, I was prepared. I knew about this, the black-white issues in the South and that. And this is a funny story. My first day I got there, we got there before school started. I went to the PE building, worked out in the morning, and I'm in the shower after working out, and all the kids from swim school come in, they're all little kids, like probably 6 to 10, maybe 12 years old. They're all black kids.
Right.
But they cussed me up and down because I was in their shower. And I didn't know what was going on. Like these little kids are calling me every name in the book. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So I remember walking out and I walked over to Charlie's office. I'm like, you're not going to believe what just happened. He's like, oh my God, you went in the shower? So that was my first introduction to sort of racism in the South. So it was a culture shock from that standpoint because it was so far behind the rest of the country, and it still is. Um, so yeah, there was some culture shock, but I'm pretty easygoing, so I took it in stride.
I would say when I first moved to Houston, I lived in Houston for 16 years. It was a eye-opening experience because they're not shy about the racist
Right.
undertones there at all.
Yeah.
So you come to Memphis and you start playing there, and you guys are really great.
Mhm.
You won national championships. And for anybody out there that maybe is wondering about, because when I did Chris's thing, I didn't understand, like, why is handball a club sport? So it's
Mhm.
not ruled by the NCAA, is it?
Right. No, it's not.
Um, it's not. So just briefly kind of talk about why that's different.
Yep. So number one, you don't have to follow NCAA rules. So if we went to a tournament that had cash prizes, we could win money.
Wow.
Um, but the school also gave us no money. So
Yeah.
all the money was donated. So we had a big fundraising handball tournament, and Charlie had a big network of people, and then the team. The team had won the nationals 2 years before I got there, so it was already been growing.
Right.
And Charlie had his supporters that donated money, had the fundraising tournament. And then when we went to tournaments, like he had a friend that was involved in the rental car business, so he'd give us free vehicles to drive the tournaments. And so the great thing was we didn't have to follow NCAA guidelines. That was the good thing. The bad thing is no, the university gave us nothing.
No scholarships then.
We did have scholarship. Well, Charlie gave us scholarship money.
Okay.
It was never full because he didn't have enough money to give everybody full rides. But my first semester tuition was $800 a semester. So he gave me 500 a semester because I didn't have any money. So he always gave me the most. I think the most of everybody because I didn't have any money,
Right.
and so it was dirt cheap back then.
It
And then
was.
by the time I graduated, it was getting by the time I graduated, I think it was maybe $3,000 a semester. And by that time, I think he was giving me 1,500, so you're still sort of covering at least half. Um, but luckily it was so cheap. When I finished undergrad school, I only had 14,000 in student loans,
Right.
which is not even a quarter of a semester now.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so it was a good time, and we were fortunate. We were really fortunate.
So what was it like? You two played doubles together, correct?
Not
Not
in
in
school.
Memphis, we didn't.
Not at
No.
school. Okay. Okay. Um, what was the thought? So let me ask this. You start at Memphis. You have your degree thought out. Did you have any type of plan for what you're going to do after college?
No, I've never had a plan for anything. Honestly, my life, I've never once had I want to do this with my life or do this or this. I've never had that. My life's been like a pinball machine, and I just
Right.
sort of would bounce from bumper to bumper, and I always got in a good direction. I've been very fortunate that way. Um, I don't know. I just sort of had an innate feeling that I was always going in the right direction for what I needed to do, and I just sort of got lucky. I did well in school, and I really liked what I did, and um, like to start my career, ironically, when I was in grad school, I had to do an internship. They called it a practicum. Um, and there was a list of places to do it, Methodist, and had all these different
Right.
wellness places and whatever. And it was nothing I was interested in because I was interested in physical therapy stuff, more
Mhm.
athletic training, injury reduction, rehab. That was always my focus. But we didn't have that at the University of Memphis. And then I went to dinner with my ex-wife, who was a girlfriend at the time, And I pulled into a parking lot in a plaza somewhere off of Poplar, and we parked in front of a building. And there it was a plaza, and I looked, and in the plaza, the shade was barely open, and I could see a stairmaster. I'm like, oh, that's weird. What's our stairmaster right there? So I just happened to get out of the car and saw a stairmaster, and then looked up and I saw a name called Health South. And then I went back. So we went to dinner. The next day, I actually went to my advisor. I said, hey, I saw this thing, Health South. What is that? And it was actually on our internship list. So he's like, oh, it's on here. So call them. So I called them saying, hey, this one, I need to do an internship. I'm a graduate student at Memphis, University of Memphis. And they blew me off. Like, no, we only take physical therapy students from University of Tennessee. And they blew me off completely, like rudely.
We don't
I was
like
like,
them.
yeah, I was like, well, that's weird. You're on my dang list. So then there was another Health South. There was multiple on there because at the time there was like 10 Health Souths, and Memphis was huge. So I called a different clinic, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that sounds great. We'd love to have you." And it turns out that the guy I was talking to was in graduate school with me. I didn't even know it.
Oh.
So then I went and interviewed. I was like, "Hey, you're in half my classes at Memphis." He's like, "Yeah." So it just was another fluke. My life's been full of coincidences and flukes, and I like to look at it as someone was looking over me my whole time. I sort of have like a little guardian angel. So that's just how I got into the career, because I looked through a shade and saw a stairmaster.
But I've talked about this before on a lot of different times about, people, if you open your eyes, you can see opportunities in front of you.
Mhm.
And what I have seen is a lot of people choose to look at that opportunity and come up with what they think the outcome is going to be. And then you have the others who just look at it as an opportunity and let me go see what happens. And I think that you fall into that. I think both of you do. You just kind of look at, hey, that's an opportunity. Let me go see what this path will take me to, or take me through, or how
Absolutely.
it will help me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Totally the latter.
So you get out of college and you go back to Canada, like you said, and you come back down here, and you're an assistant coach with
Yep. Yeah, I was
okay.
helping Charlie coach the team. Yeah.
So in how does it different coaching versus playing? And is that something you enjoyed?
I always enjoy teaching the technical aspect of the game. But all the players were high quality players, and they didn't really want to listen to you. So I never really. There was a couple guys that wanted to learn about strategy and this that I enjoyed trying to teach. But more than anything, it was training. Charlie just used me to help train them because that was my background. So
Right.
more than anything, it was more just making sure the guys were in shape and helping on that aspect.
So for go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so Sandy, for us back then, the national tournament, the format has changed since when we played. When we played, everybody was put into one giant draw, and the coaches would make sure they would get their players to avoid each other as long as they could, right? That was the goal. And the coaches would have a big meeting on the first night
So when you say avoid, you mean just so you two wouldn't have to play against each other?
exactly
Okay.
till the furthest we could. And so that meant the tournament, you played a lot of rounds. Now the first couple of rounds could be fairly easy for the good players, but you had to play a lot of rounds. So we had to be in shape. So, Rob with his background would make sure that, we were in shape, and we worked out with the racquetball team, and we did our workouts, and it showed in our success for all of us that we all went pretty far in those national tournaments.
So let me ask you this. You brought that up. What do you think made Memphis State's teams so good for so long?
The coaches, they were just highly respected within the racquetball and handball communities. I think that was the big thing, and see success breeds success. So as things became more successful, more kids would want to come, because then it just would. You didn't even have to kids. Like we had a guy come from Chicago Bob Androwski that by all means should have been. He could have gone to Lake Forest, but that's where he would go because he was in Chicago and Lake Forest was in Chicago. But he chose to come to Memphis because of Charlie. Because Charlie was such a solid, lovable person. Like you'll never ever hear a bad word about Charlie was doing, and everybody knew that. And we all got along, so people would just like when we would go to a national tournament, the other coaches would see us walk in, and they could tell we were a tight unit. We were buddies, we were friends, and we had each other's backs, and we sort of walked in like rock stars. It was funny for the handball, because like one of the coaches from Pacific, Mike Steele, he would say his players would watch us walk in just as we walked in, which we never had to see what was going on. He's like, you guys look like you were rock stars walking into the collegiate tournament. And I guess one year we all wore suit jackets or something, and I'm sure none of them matched. But he said, my players were just, everybody was just like bowing down to you guys, which was sort of weird to think about it now. But on the other hand, it was great to know that we had that respect.
Sure.
We always had the top 4 players in the country. It was just.
And Sandy, you bring up now like NCAA, the portal, right? And players changing teams. Those of us that started at Memphis, we never left.
No, you didn't.
None of us. But we had guys leave other schools to come and play with us. Right. One of my, our teammate, my doubles partner, Matt Hyber, left Lake Forest. And Dave McGrath left San Diego State. Bob Adrowski, he came. So we had guys coming to our school, but none of us ever left. We never thought about it.
And it was true when you guys came in the dorm. It was because so some of you moved out to the handball house in your sophomore year. I wasn't around when Chris was there, but when the racquetball players came too, like all of you would come into the dorm and everybody's like, "Ooh, those are the handball players." Everybody would whisper. I didn't even know what handball was. And I still didn't I assumed you play it with your hand. Like I didn't really know until I saw some pictures. But so let's talk about, what do you think brought on the decline of handball at Memphis?
Well, it was Charlie retiring. Yeah. So Charlie had the intention, he thought I would stay in Memphis and then take over coaching the team. Right. Which I would have loved to do, but I wasn't going to stay in Memphis. I love Chattanooga. I always loved Chattanooga. And my wife was from Chattanooga. So I really knew I wasn't going to stay in Memphis. And when I left, and I think you probably would have liked Chris to do the same thing. And then when Chris left, there was just no one to take over. And he just sort of let it go. It was really disappointing. That was the only, I'm not going to say anything bad, but the one disappointing thing I had about Charlie is he never really tried hard to find someone to take over and keep it going. He just sort of said, "Okay, I've done my thing. We've had a ton of success. I'm sort of done." And he just packed it in, and it just disappeared quickly.
It did. I forgot to look. I don't even know if we have a handball team.
No. 94, maybe is the last year. 95, maybe at the most.
My God.
So Charlie just let the guys. He kept it going until he never brought any new players in after Chris and I. Well, yes, he did. But after, say, 90, he didn't bring any more players in. He just let those guys graduate out.
Right.
When as those players graduate out, the team dissolved.
But Rob, wasn't there an issue that, I think when you were, a graduate student and you were helping coach the team, I think you had to be on staff or be faculty. Wasn't that part of one of the hiccups there?
It was. Well, you have to have a sponsor.
Because you were from Canada.
Yeah, well, you said it could be any faculty member, anybody that worked for the university could be a sponsor of the team. So you
Oh,
could have
okay.
an outside person coaching as long as you had a team sponsor. Um, it just never was pursued.
Yeah.
Charlie was just tired, and we'd had our success, and sort of saw the heyday, and he was happy with it.
Right. Um, so you finish coaching and you get your master's degree.
Mhm.
You were still playing competitively. Let's talk about when you got on that pro circuit.
Actually, so when I finished grad school, it was '94. Got married '95. I wasn't playing. I was still playing competitively in our region, but I wasn't trying to qualify on the pro tour. I was still going to the Canadian Nationals, but I wasn't going to the U.S. Nationals. I wasn't as competitive. Um, Mainly, my career was starting. Was married, didn't have kids.
You got out of grad school. Did you start playing professionally immediately?
No, so I didn't play a lot from '94 through '98. I was working, married, moved to Chattanooga. I was still playing, but I wasn't trying to go in the pro tour, play on the pro tour stuff. I was playing Canadian Nationals, but that was about it.
Right.
And then I got divorced in '98 and started a business. So now I had a lot more time. So in '98 when I started really playing and training hard again. And then in '99 is when I first qualified for the pro tour. And I was going to all the pro stops, and I mean all the pro qualifiers, and then got fortunate to qualify finally. And then I started going to the U.S. Nationals and always the Canadian Nationals. So I got a lot more active from '98 through like 2000, well, really all the way to 2016.
So
But
let me ask this. Let me just stop and ask this. What was the motivating factor that you wanted to play pro?
well, I think
Well, it
all
wasn't
of
the
us
money.
always did.
What did you say, Chris? Money?
It wasn't the money.
Yeah, no, it wasn't the money.
So
Um,
that begs the huge question. Like you already had a master's degree and you already had a job. Like what was that motivating factor? And how old were you in 1999?
so 30-ish. Yeah,
30.
30-ish.
So what was that like what was that motivating factor that pushed you to say, "Hey, I want to get back in training shape and I want to go pro."
Because as a junior, we always want to become a professional. So one of my goals was always to play in the pro tour. I wanted to be the number one pro in the world, like all kids want to be. And that was one of my goals. And when I finally got to the point of, hey, actually, I have the time and I have some money now, um, now I can try to do it. So it just sort of gave me a spark. And
So
so I got back.
so for handball players, I mean, if you look like a basketball player, they couldn't wait till they're 30 years old and like, "Hey, I'm going to go try and get a pro contract overseas or something." But as a handball player, I'm guessing the physical, it's not that it's not physical, but I think it's not physically demanding in a way that football and basketball are, because you can't imagine a 30-year-old, even though they'd played in college, going and playing
Right.
pro basketball or football.
Well, I was way late. So it's funny. A couple guys are like, "Man, you're the oldest guy to ever qualify," and I probably one of them. So no, it was late. The handball is extremely physical, more than any sport you can imagine, really. So to get back, and I was in decent shape. I wasn't like I was in horrendous shape, but
Right.
um, I got in really good shape when I was 30. Like between 29 to 35.
Mhm.
That's by far when I was in better shape then than I was. Well, I can't say that too because we were in really good shape at Memphis. But I was in really good shape for my age. But now I just had the time, the means, and still had the motivation. And I always had that goal. So Chris and my buddy Matt, they went on. I'm not sure if they qualified during college, but right after college they qualified in the pro tour. So you sort of felt like you were left out. that you wanted to be part of that
yeah.
group as well.
Right.
So everything just sort of opened up. You know,
Yeah.
my wife looked at me and said, I'm not happy that you're starting a business. And I was like, good. Now we can get divorced and I can do what I want to do. That's sort of how it worked. Unfortunately, because she's a great lady. She still is, but she was just not supportive. So it just sort of everything fell in place again, like it always sort of has.
I got more than I bargained for in this podcast.
Oh,
So, I think back to what I just said, and it makes more sense. So you weren't like joining a team, you were individual plays. In basketball and football, they're joining a team.
correct.
And so there is a huge difference. What was it like to play pro then? Like how was, what was that?
Humbling. So, handball is if you need to sort of Google it and look at the top level pro handball players.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably one level above where Chris and I ever got to that we could have never really got to. Like, there's a handful of guys when we were playing that there's no way you could really have a chance at beating them. Probably the top 4 or 5 guys, there was just no chance.
Right.
So when I started playing on the pro tour, I was one of the lower ranked guys. They have 16 guys in the tournament. I would be ranked between 12 to 16. And so you didn't get any respect from those other guys. You had to earn your respect.
Sure.
And it takes a while. You're playing guys that are more talented. I was in as good a shape, if not better shape, but they had more talent, more skill. And it took a while to sort of feel a little bit of respect. But it got to the point where I knew that I had sort of reached my peak. I'd accomplished probably as far as I could go. I got to number 13. And back then, they invited the top 12 pros to every event. And then the other below that, you had to qualify. So I always had to try to qualify. And then when I got to number 13, I got invited to some events because guys they needed to fill a spot. But I was always the lower level guy. So it was humbling and it killed your ego a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also killed your motivation because I knew when I played David Troutman, who's the best player to ever play the game, I didn't have a chance. I had zero chance. And it was great to be on the court with him. And all I wanted to do was try to get an ounce of respect from him. And he would never give it to me.
Chris, did you want to say something?
The hardest part, that the way the pro game was designed, like Rob said, the top 12 got invited to the tournament and you would have to go and qualify. So basically, you were playing in a tournament to try and qualify for 4 spots. So you've already played 2, 3, 4 matches, and then you've got to play a top 12 guy who's fresh. These guys, you're worn out. And if you could break through and beat a top 12 guy to break into the top 12, it took a few times. It was really, really difficult. And again, Sandy, the money, it's not a sport that these guys are playing 1 year of college basketball and signing for millions of dollars. I'd do that too if I had that ability. But it's what was a purse, Rob? Like a winning purse was what, $3,500?
Yeah, $3,500. So the minimum payment was $767.67 or something like that.
$767.50, because I cashed a few of those checks.
Like $700?
Yeah.
So then it is about it's not monetary. The motivation to do that is the ego, the respect, the self-confidence and everything. Did y'all ever play against each other?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we did many times, but not professionally. We didn't. We played at different times. I was after Chris. I don't think he was playing at all when I started, because I started late.
So what prompted you to finally say, well, and I preface that by saying you're still playing competitively a little bit. You're playing a tournament this year?
I am. I stopped playing in 2016. That was sort of the end of my handball career, if you call it that.
So so that would be the start of your what we call the fifth quarter. So what prompted that? Like what prompted that and how hard was it?
Wasn't hard at all because the game destroys your body so much that you're just sick of the pain. And I've always had back issues. So my back's always been an issue. It got, honestly, for me, it just got to the point where I felt like I had accomplished enough for me personally,
Right.
to say, okay, I've accomplished some stuff and I'm happy with what I accomplished. And I actually got inducted in the Canadian Hall of Fame in 2016, and that was my last tournament. And I sort of planned that. I said, okay, this is it.
That's what a way to go out.
Yeah, and I stopped. Actually, Chris and I might have played in that. I don't know if we played in that tournament together or not.
So let me ask you this: you had to play in a tournament and be inducted?
No. It just happened. The induction was at the Canadian National Championships.
Okay.
So,
and you played in the Canadian National.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went to that, and then they have an induction ceremony at the banquet.
Okay, got it.
And then I decided. So that was 2016. My business. So I had a business that was. I had to work so hard just to keep up with keeping the business going.
So what was the business?
So it was in the physical therapy field. So I evaluate people on workers' comp.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So I do physical testing on them, determine what they can physically do, if they can do their job, if they can't, and I just help the physicians and insurance companies determine what to do with the people.
Okay.
And by 2016, I had sold my business in 14. Now I'm working for the corporation I sold it to, and I just sort of lost my motivation. It just wasn't as fun anymore. A lot of my buddies weren't playing anymore, going to tournaments.
It goes back to that family thing.
It does. You still, like when we go, I'm going to play this year at the Canadian Nationals in May, and there'll still be people there I know really well, but it won't be my close-knit group.
Wait a minute. You're playing in the Canadian Nationals?
I am in May. So me and my partner Jeff have decided we're going to go to the Worlds in October, and anybody can play. You don't have to qualify. You just pay your entry fee.
You're making it sound too easy now.
It is easy as long as you have $85 you can play. But so Jeff and I, back up a little bit, I quit playing in 2016. The Worlds in 2018, they're every 3 years they have the World Championships. They were in Minneapolis. And so I talked to Jeff, who's always my double partner, Jeff Cottam.
Is that the Jeff Cottam?
Yep. Okay. And so I said, hey, the Worlds are in Minneapolis. Why don't we go play? And Jeff hadn't played in ages. Like, he hadn't played since college at all. And so I hadn't played in 2 years. And I just had elbow surgery. I had elbow surgery two months before the tournament. And I was like, oh, let's just go and have fun. So we went up, and one of our buddies, Matt Hyber, lives in Minneapolis. So yeah, we'll go hang out with Matt. Kevin Hill, another one of our teammates, went.
I remember all of them.
Yep. So we just went. And Jeff and I played really well. Like, we were seeded 5th, and we got to the finals. And so we beat the 4 seeds and the first seeds, and we got to the finals. And by the time we got to the finals, I couldn't move my right elbow that I had surgery on. Like, literally, I could move it about 10 degrees. So I was like, so I looked at Jeff and I'm like, I'm gonna have to play left-handed. I can't do anything with my right. And then in the warm-up, I hurt my left shoulder. And I looked at it like, well, no, I can't really do much with my left. So I'll do what I can. So we actually still played decent. I couldn't do much, but Jeff played great. He's a phenomenal athlete. And we should have won the tournament. We lost in a tiebreaker to some guys from Ireland. And so that really irritated me. I was really ticked off. And I hadn't prepared. I had played like 3 times before the tournament. So I wasn't prepared. And then by that point, my elbow wasn't even close to being ready. And I decided, okay, it's just not worth playing anymore. And then COVID comes.
Right.
2021 Worlds get postponed. They're in Ireland because we were planning on going to that just for fun to play in Ireland. And now this year, so the Worlds they finally come up in Ireland again. And Jeff's actually been playing fairly regularly for the last probably 6 months.
Have
and
you?
So no. I'm trying to find my handball bag. I'm not sure where it is. But part of that's on purpose. I'm not looking that hard. But we decided, okay, let's play in the Worlds this year, and I convinced him to do that because we should have won the last one.
So that's like a month away, 2 months away.
Yeah.
A month and a half away.
Yeah. I'm working out, and I ride.
Worlds
Right.
is in October.
Oh, I thought he said May. Okay.
No, that's the Canadians.
Oh, you're going to play in the Canadians too?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're just playing doubles. We're just playing in our age group, so it's not, it's just a bunch of old guys just floating around the handball court. But I'm going to try to get ready. Yeah. So actually, this week is my week. I'm dedicating myself. Okay, I'm going to go into the court by myself where no one can see me, and start hitting the handball again, just to get moving around, get my hands used to it again. And I've already been doing a little bit with the racquetball, but I got to get a handball. So it's starting this week. It's supposed to start tonight, but
you did this instead.
I did this instead, which I'm happy to do because I'm not excited to start playing handball.
It hurts.
It hurts.
I'm glad
It hurts.
I made it up a little bit higher. So let's talk about a little bit of what else you've been doing. So I read that, well, I didn't read, you put in the little form that I make you all fill out. You talked about you'd been a 15-year board member for USHA, which is United States Handball Association, and 8 years for the Canadian one.
Yep.
What got you into doing that?
So when I came to Chattanooga, for whatever reason, I've always been sort of a guy to step up and do stuff and organize. And Chattanooga desperately needed someone to do that. And so I just sort of jumped right into the role of just running tournaments and organizing the guys, because most handball guys.
So let me ask this: there are handball tournaments in Tennessee?
Yeah.
Just not in Memphis.
Well, not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yeah, there was. We ran the tournament in Memphis probably till what year was the last one? 98, maybe.
Yeah.
But and then so in Chattanooga we had a great club downtown called the Sports Barn that me and all the guys played at, and it was a perfect club to hold tournaments. So I started running tournaments at the Sports Barn. So that started probably in '96 when I moved here. And then when I got divorced, I really started pushing them hard and running big tournaments, having pro stops, having national tournaments, having pro qualifiers. So I had the time to do it. Plus, I was playing a lot too. So we were sort of known as, for the South, Chattanooga became the handball hotbed for tournaments. And we had great tournaments. All the players from all over would come here to play because we had a great facility, great city, and we ran a really good tournament. So I did that for a long time. It burns you out. It's hard. I would run 2 tournaments a year, sometimes 3. And eventually you just get tired because you don't really get a lot of help. You have to beg for help.
Sure.
And then the last big tournament I ran in 2014 was the National Master Doubles. And that was sort of my last hurrah to run a tournament. So I wanted it to be the best tournament that anyone had ever gone to. Right. And I think I accomplished that for most tournaments. It was a phenomenal tournament.
I was there, Sandy, and it was a great tournament. Rob, he really knows how to host a tournament in the hospitality.
Goes back to that handball house.
Yeah, and Chattanooga is such a great city, and the handball guys at the Sports Barn, they were an incredible group of guys. And I remember guys, they were saying how this was the best tournament. They want to come back. It was such a good event. There was social thing. Handball's such a social game, right?
Which is interesting because you're in a little area. It's not like you do you have people that watch the games?
Yeah, there's at the Sports Barn's a big glass side wall and back wall, and most of the courts there had glass back walls. So there's a bar next to the glass court, and so it was very social, right? And Rob had hired out the bridge in Chattanooga. There was one walking bridge, and there was catered event, and there was bands, and we
Goes
did the
back to
baseball
handball
game.
house parties.
We did
Oh,
the
yeah.
we did the Chattanooga Lookouts baseball game, and he reserved the outfield. Like it
Dang.
was such a fun event.
Yeah.
It was
Well,
so
we
much
did,
fun. I went back with my kids that summer.
we did the pedal thing. Remember the
Yeah, the paddle bar.
So
the pedal bar?
Chattanooga should put you on their tourism board.
Well, yeah. I don't know about that.
So, okay, so let me ask this then. So let's get it back to what colleges now do you keep up with the handball
Mhm.
thing?
Yep.
What are the colleges that have the best teams right now?
Yeah. So now it's University of Minnesota Mankato is number one.
Never
I
heard
think,
of it.
yeah, it's there's a couple handball guys that started a team there. I don't
Okay.
even know if they work at the university. One of them may. I don't even know, but they're the number one team now. Southwest Missouri, or what's Southwest Missouri called now? They changed their name, but Southwest Missouri State.
Isn't it Missouri State now?
I've
Missouri
heard
State.
of them.
Yeah, they still have a team going. Texas A&M,
Wow.
Wake Forest. Those are the big teams. Ireland is sending a lot of kids now. When we played, Ireland never sent collegiate kids because
So
we
I
probably.
so that's an interesting question though. I only know Ireland for like golf and soccer because we had a few soccer guys when I was in college that came from Ireland to play soccer at Memphis. But what is like how did handball get started in Ireland? Like what's the big
So
I would not put
so
handball with Ireland.
in Ireland they have something called the GAA, the Gaelic Athletic Association, and
Okay.
three sports make up the GAA, and one of those is Gaelic football, hurley, which is probably a game you've never heard of or
Yeah.
seen, and handball. Those are the three sports that
I
make up
learned something new.
the Gaelic Athletic Association. So around Ireland, in the counties that dot the country, they'll have what's known as an alley. So they have these outdoor handball courts, usually in the parish. So they play in these outdoor three-wall courts, and in some of the more populated areas, they'll have a four-wall court, and they usually just have one court in that town, and they all tend to play, and then they play for an All Ireland championship. And the reason that the sport of handball came to North America, in the most part, was when the Irish Catholic priests came to North America, they brought the game with them. So, for instance, where I went to high school in Toronto is on the property of what was called the St. Augustine Seminary, where the priests come to learn.
Right. Right.
So the Irish priests came over. There were 5 outdoor handball courts on that property, and I went to the high school attached to it. So if you see old pictures of Ireland alleys, as they were called, they look
Right.
like the courts that were on my school property.
Yep.
So that brings up a question. If I go back and think about my history, is that, and I think you and I had talked about that, Chris, that handball is like a really old sport.
Yep.
And, I've seen things where I was in the Yucatan and saw some ruins where they had they had a little hole, so it could possibly be an old version of basketball, but you have a lot of walls. And so you don't really have any other apparatus to play with back, thousands of years
Yeah,
ago.
Exactly.
the game has different versions all over the world, and in places like Mexico, where you'd see like a highlight court, they play a game called pelota, and pelota is just Spanish for ball. And
Okay.
they play a similar game where they hit the ball kind of high on the wall,
Right.
where we tend to hit the ball low. They play a version in Spain. The Basques play a different version of the game. So it's played all over. And now the growth of the game is in one wall version of handball. So in New York City, you can see one wall courts all over the place. In Brooklyn, they play
Right.
tons of it. And that's where the growth of our game is happening now. In Europe, they play in Belgium, they play in Spain, the Netherlands, Ireland, England. There's a lot of growth because they're trying to get it into the Olympics, and they've kind of rebranded the name of it now and calling it wall ball, because if you look up handball in the Olympics, it's the team handball game, or what we refer to as European handball, which is a completely different game.
Oh.
So
Yep.
And you would think that with a game or variations that are it's so really old that it would be a natural fit to go into the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the perfect game for the Olympics. So, and to look at history, handball is the oldest game in the world played with a ball. So they dated it back to the Mayan times.
Right.
Some version, and it's sort of similar to soccer. So, okay, you have these people that had no means to do anything. They want to play some kind of game. So they start kicking they start kicking a rock around or whatever, and soccer is developed.
Right.
Handball is the same thing. It took, I think they did. Chris was right up there with this. They took intestines from animals and wrapped them around rocks to make a ball to hit with their hands. That's sort of how it started
Right.
in different countries. So it dates back to Mayan times. So it's the oldest game in the world.
And y'all do so for people out there that don't know anything about handball, you actually play with a glove on your hand, right?
You do. It's just to keep the sweat off the ball, though. It doesn't protect your hand. It's a fairly thin glove. It's thicker than a golf glove, but it's not there to protect your hand.
And the
It's just to
ball,
keep.
how thicker? How's the ball?
So it's smaller than a racquetball, but it's a lot harder, a lot denser. So when you pick it up, I'm not sure. I can't remember how many ounces it
Doesn't
is.
that hurt when you hit it? Because you're
It
hitting it
does.
really
Yes.
hard.
at first it does.
You learn how to hit it properly, then it doesn't hurt.
Do you get any injuries with your hands?
Oh yeah. Yep. Bone bruises. I broke my finger. Actually, I broke my finger running into the wall, but no, you have like my hands are a mess now. I've had multiple surgeries on my hands, probably associated to handball with tendon and carpal tunnel issues. And it's tough on your hands.
Hey Sandy,
Mhm.
I need to send you a video that just happened last month. So the US National Collegiates was in Minnesota, and a kid during a match ran through a glass back wall and completely shattered it.
Yeah, I don't
So
need to see that. Did he
Yeah,
get hurt?
crazy.
it,
No.
the kid got up, shook it off, was a champ. It made like I don't know how many million hits on Barstool Sports when they posted it.
Sure.
It was pretty crazy.
Okay, so let me ask both of you this. What do you see do you see a resurgence of handball in other cities like Memphis? I would think not if you don't have handball players here because the university has no monetary reason to bring
Right.
it back.
Right. I'm sure some of the old professors are still playing. There's probably a few guys playing at the university at the old P building. They were old when we
I
were
don't
there.
even know if we have handball courts.
The P building, I haven't been there in a couple of years. The P building should still have the courts.
We have a new one. Like we
Yeah,
don't
I
have
know.
the old.
But they haven't torn it down yet, have they? The PE building? I think it's still there.
I don't know. I have to go look.
I'm pretty sure it's still there because the rec director told me that they were going to keep those courts because they didn't put courts in the new facility. That they
Yeah.
were going to keep those courts there.
Hmm.
So Sandy, so the courts were in the Hyper building on Eccles, but there was also old courts. We never played on them in the old over by where the field house is.
Yeah, in the old field house.
In the
Oh,
field house, there's courts in that
I
building.
played in those. I took a racquetball class because I need the racquetball team. I took a racquetball class in the field house,
Yeah.
which is how I met Sylvester Gray and Marvin Alexander by accident because they were coming out of the field house. It all makes sense now. But you're right. I took a racquetball class over there.
Yeah.
I don't even know where in the field house they would be now.
Sandy, did you know that Elvis played racquetball on the
I did.
courts at Memphis?
I did know he played racquetball. I didn't know he played on the courts at
Yeah.
Memphis.
Yeah.
So actually, Charlie was the one that would go let him in at midnight. And Elvis would bring an entourage of people, 20, 30 people with him, and they would play till 6 in the morning. And then Charlie would go and let them out and lock the doors.
Okay, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Breaking news for all of you out there. And Charlie passed away in was it 2019, 2020, 2019?
Wait, no, it was before that. Maybe 17?
Okay.
17 or 18. It's actually in those pictures I sent you. When his memorial was in there, I think it was 17 or 18.
Right.
But yeah, but Elvis played there until and then he built his own court at Graceland, and then he stopped going to university to play.
That'll be some breaking news for everybody, but I'm sure somebody knows it. So Chris, do you have any other questions before I do my end segment?
You know, I know so much about Rob,
I
so
know, right?
you know, it's hard for me to ask him a question, and we've shared so many things, and there's inside jokes about us, and you know, my brother's going to see Rob in Montreal next month, so he's going to hear all the fun stuff, and we still get ribbed and joked about it. But so my question for Rob: so what do you think? What is the biggest takeaway that you got from going to Memphis State and playing handball there?
Love. Simple. It is, as stupid and corny as it is.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Well, we're guys. We're all, we're gonna blush and laugh about it, but no, we all loved each other as brothers. Like Chris and I are brothers from another mother. We always have been, and we've gotten closer since we left Memphis. There's a group of us that still are super tight knit, and when we get together, it's as crazy as when we were in the handball.
Which was pretty
We
great.
can't drink like we used to.
Well, we can't because it hurts too much. We can only get together for 2 days now because the first night kills you.
Okay, so Rob, what do you think your value is now?
My value, like my what do you mean by that? My value.
You didn't read the prep notes.
I guess not. I didn't know.
And it's funny. Everybody always gets that look on their face. What do you mean? What do you think your value is to others now? Like, what do you think? Like, what do you think? Yeah.
I've always been a very giving, generous person. And a lot of that was because of what I received from handball, that I was always willing to give back. So I think for me, handball just provided me a medium to give back to people. And that was running tournaments and organizing stuff and organize alumni stuff for when we had alumni tournaments. And you get a lot of personal satisfaction from giving back and seeing that people appreciate it.
Right.
And that's really what I think is the most valuable thing I received from not just being going to Memphis State, but just from the sport and the long-term friendships I have. And it's a huge family. Like, I don't know if you can really get the feeling, but throughout America, throughout the world, we have friends we haven't seen in 20 years, and we're still good buddies.
Right.
And it's just that type of sport. A lot of sports are like that, but it's very unique that way.
So if any of you are noticing the technical issues with Rob's audio, it's because he's like up on some mountain in East Tennessee. On Wi-Fi. So I apologize. I apologize for that. Okay, last question. What would you tell a 9-year-old Rob?
Who now?
Yeah. What would you tell a 9-year-old Rob?
Oh, a 9-year-old Rob. Oh boy.
No, a 9-year-old Rob. What would you tell a 9-year-old of yourself at 9 years old? What would you tell a 9-year-old Rob?
Oh boy. What would I tell? You're going to be
those questions.
I'm sorry. I guess I missed that. I would say, don't worry. You're going to be very fortunate in your life. Don't worry about it. Don't worry you don't have a family providing for you. Don't worry where your next meal is coming from or how you're going to pay for something. You're going to be fine. That's what I would tell them. I wish I had someone tell me that. Don't worry about it. I've had one guy in my life tell me, you don't need to worry about anything. You always come out smelling like roses, so don't worry. And it was an aha moment for me. Like, yes, you're right. When I look back at it in time, you're right. Everything has worked out. So I would tell 9-year-old Rob, don't worry. Just enjoy yourself, which I did anyways. But don't stress. Don't worry about stuff. It's all going to be fine.
Okay. Chris, do you have any last comments?
I think for both of us, as young athletes and, moving away from home when we did into a different country, yeah, hey, we grew up with American television. We knew a lot about United States. So it wasn't a big culture shock to us. It was funny for us to go to an international student meeting and, why are we here? Right. Well, we were technically foreigners,
That's
but
right.
I think for us, we followed our dream of playing a sport that we loved. We didn't do this for money.
Right.
We didn't do it for fame. We were all fortunate to, come to Memphis, play for a great guy, Charlie Mazzoni, and to have the friendships and brotherhood of our teammates and the people we met
Yes.
outside of the handball, people like our friend Christy and all our friends, and Donnie plays handball
Donnie. Yeah.
and he became involved in the group, right? And there was so many, and we've kept those friendships for so long, and I think it's so important for us, and the people that we've met, and I think the way a guy like Charlie was to us, it rubbed off on us a lot, and that's why Rob is
Right.
given back to the game as much as he has, and that we're humble, and we enjoy doing things to help other people. It's something that we're all a solid group of good parents for our group of guys that all have
Mhm.
kids. So I think it's rubbed off really well for all of us. So I think we appreciate the opportunity that we got.
I think if there's one word that can sum up handball and all of you at Memphis and the whole situation is family. I think that's the one word that can
Mhm.
sum it all up. Because you didn't do it for money and you didn't do it for some big diamond ring or anything like that. And it's to me the epitome of what athletes and athletic teams, that's to me that's what it's all about, is the team spirit, the camaraderie, the family aspect of it.
Yeah, it's more pure, right? It's a more
It is.
pure type of sport that we played. It's not commercialized. You
Right.
don't see it on TV. There isn't endorsement deals. It's pure. It's
There's no
really
transfer
pure.
portal.
Yeah.
um there's no transfer portal.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. As we wrap up this episode, thank you all for listening, sharing our episodes. I love reading all your comments in the show reviews. Please take a moment to like, share, and review our podcast on Apple. That helps the show get found by everyone else. I so appreciate each and every one of you for all of the support. Thank you, Rob, for coming on today. Thank you, Chris, for guest co hosting. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast with my special co host, Chris Jennings, and today's guest, Rob Pierce. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.